Hey, welcome back to my channel. I just want to do a really quick check-in about, I'm basically, I think, going to stop talking about toxic people now because I feel like it's time for a few videos on other things involved in my life rather than just toxic people. But I have really enjoyed making videos about toxic people, and it is an ongoing process to ward them off at the end of the day. That's kind of how this video is going to start off. It's basically referring to, it's kind of, I think my final chapter, if you like, on this, for like final part of healing from toxic people is I've done so much boundary work in terms of making boundaries with toxic people, cutting toxic people off, realising they can't have healthy relationships, that sort of thing, radical acceptance, blah blah blah, healing from past emotions that have been repressed if you've been stuck in toxic emotions, stopping the minimising, stopping the and stuff like that, and like looking at stuff as it is rather than sort of over applying like biblical things because you're trying to be a good person, or if you have some sort of religious connotations to yourself that you might also engage in. But apart from that, I think it's a sense finally for me to also be looking at, I think it's breaking the roadmap of codependency as a terminology. And I know like everyone gets their path of healing through different ways and it's probably not going to be the same as me, but I do think we all like go through these phases at different times. You know, if you're recovering from dealing with toxic people and you're not a toxic person yourself, but it's coming to the place of like freedom and full transcendence from a toxic situation. And like with this comes a few things, because I've done a video on this recently, but I don't know, it didn't really get to the point very quickly and I was just sort of rambling about stuff. And it's about being like, you know, we all are predisposed to different things to compensate for our feelings of inadequacy, because everyone has a feeling of inadequacy. It's just narcissists have this chronically because of their narcissism, but it's like we all have healthy level of narcissism. So like when people try and overcompensate, like they can do it in different ways. Mine is like overachieving rather than anything else. You can also be obsessed with social status, or you can have a level of people pleasing. I fall under the overachieving category, where even if it's not actually doing me any good, if I feel like I'm achieving highly, or I feel like I'm being maybe even overproductive, if you like, which isn't even, I think, overachievement. Anyway, let's not go into overachievement now, but it's also about being smart about the way you go about stuff. It's not about like working hard, it's about being smart at the same time. But anyway, let's not doing that. And as toxic people, that's just going to cut a whole lot of energy and life force out of your life. And yeah, realising you don't have to do things just because people ask, because a sense for me is having, I'm still unpicking unprocessed, I'm on my feet, I'm picking my feet, but I'm unpicking I'm still writing down and journaling as I go along ideas that have resonated with me about toxic people and the nature of like what I'm engaging in, and a level of safe porting that I've kind of consistently been telling myself, this narrative, in order to like survive a situation, or actually it's just a sense of manipulation that I've had to be engaged in myself from toxic people actually starting this mindset with me, so they can get what they want. For example, like I'm going to stick to this rather than just ramble, but you have to build more and more boundaries, because it's not your fault for the abuse. It's always really important to like keep giving yourself that, because it is a level of manipulation that you're being engaged in, and it's not like you wouldn't like choose to be manipulated, even though you can discern it in the future and build insulation and boundaries, which I'm about to talk about. It's not your fault that it happened in the first place, because the engagement of it is like an attack by nature, and they like to divide and conquer people, so which is why you might feel isolated. It's not your fault at all. It's about building boundaries to insulate yourself in the future, and over time this becomes second nature. And I think I've done this like throughout my life, not gonna lie, ever since like, you know, teenagehood probably, or probably before, I don't know, but I'm just really coming to a place of fully disintegrating the toxic patterns that I've been consumed in. And like because toxic people, they do consume your time and energy, and you might not need them anymore, like especially if you've been codependent. like they can give you a sense of like validation at a time that you're not able to give it to yourself and stuff. And when you're not interested in, you know, if you don't need to deal with that anymore because you're not codependent anymore, aka you've recovered from toxic abuse, you don't need to be getting more toxic abuse. Like, logically, you don't want to be having more toxic abuse, but if you've been programmed by toxic abuse, you're going to try and get more of it because of, like, the law of attraction. That's what you're used to accepting. Time is your most valuable thing. Someone that I watch on YouTube says, and I do agree as well, because I think, like, money, although it really helps you out and you do need money for, like, functioning, and it can be nice to have a bit of extra money and, like, go on shopping trips and, like, you know, buy new stuff that you need or want or whatever, it doesn't bring a level of happiness. And it's like such a like commonly used phrase, like money doesn't buy happiness, but it is so true. Like, money literally does not buy happiness. You can get happiness from like achieving a sense of a goal, of getting something that you need. That's one thing, and that's a level of, you know, stuff like that. It can be temporary pleasure and even like satisfaction from achieving something that you want, especially if you've been like really wanting it and you're going to get a lot of use out of it or whatever, which is helpful. That's kind of something else, but that's not the money that gives you that. That's the achievement of getting something useful that is going to benefit you, and there's a difference. Like, so if narcissists like do give you money or whatever, or you're relying on them for finances, God forbid, or whatever, or you're like, you've been sort of conditioned with money in the past, time is the most valuable thing, and energy is the most valuable thing. So this guy thinks time's the most valuable thing. I think energy is the most valuable thing. But it kind of goes along with time in that, you know, if you're giving time, it's about giving time to people who benefit from it, who will act, because narcissists don't benefit from your time and goodness, really. Like, they're like obviously unchangeable people, and they might use your energy and time and stuff, and like your good nature and everything to get about a level of something that they want, but they won't benefit in the long term from it. They'll literally use you and discard you. Like, that is literally how they work. So they're not going to benefit. Like, if you have a healthy person and you give them your good energy, they're going to benefit from your good energy. They're not going to just sort of like use it and abuse it and like let it go. Do you know what I mean? Like, so that's one thing. And also people that are reciprocal, whereas like if you're not giving and getting a level of reciprocation from a relationship, you're just gonna, oh, that was a great yawn. I haven't yawned in ages. It's not weird. You don't have a really good sneeze. But yeah, people that give reciprocally to you and get reciprocal stuff from you, I suppose, that would probably be the best place to be putting your time and energy. And basically making your own choices, not caring about what anyone else thinks. And I even was going to go more elaborately in my actual notes when I was watching a video about this. It's not even about it's nothing more than not caring about what people think. Like, even though they will lie about you, they'll smear you, they'll try and gaslight you, they'll try and fit you in this like narcissistic extension box to suit them and make them feel better about themselves, or like valid for their mindset, which is pathological. It just point blank doesn't matter what they think. Like, it doesn't matter really what, you know, smears aren't nice to experience when people say lies about you and stuff, but it really doesn't matter what they think, because it's not true, so there's going to be no ground for it to stand on. If they get some temporary validation from that from someone, and someone might think a lie about you, yeah, is that not ideal? No, but at the same time, is it going to stand really in the long term? And also, does it really matter in the short term? Quite possibly not. Who really cares? And because it only really matters about the people that you actually value the opinion of. And if someone's going to sit there and gossip about you, they probably aren't worth the time of day from you anyway. And if they're talking about you, then they're going to like believe lies about you, and sort of like, you know, sometimes people just are innocent. Things like flying monkeys and stuff, or people that give the narcissist validation about lies from you. It can come from an innocent place, you know. But equally, you know, if they're going to be taking sides with a narcissist, they're going to do that anyway, because they don't even know who you are. So it just doesn't really matter on that level. And your cup has to be full first. It's not about trying to, you know, go around, because at the end of the day, it's just a level of manipulation. If you go around trying to untie all the ties that the narcissist makes about you, you're really just kind of, you know, being in this place of further manipulation, because you're getting engaged in a situation, in terms of the smears and the, you know, you're just getting more and more aggravated about things that they're doing, so their manipulation's working. So if you just not try and be engaged in the actual lies that they tell about you, because they tell us lies about everyone. And you are also, another thing to think in terms of this stuff is you're going to, I talked recently when I was rambling in a video, which I probably won't post, your vibration massively gets higher in after a narcissistic relationship, and you've healed a lot of your emotions, that you can find polarized emotions, and you can have a lot more autonomy in the way you go about life. But getting wisdom post-narcissistic relationship would also help others. That's another thing. So you will feel amazingly better in yourself and healed from a somatic and mental place. Like your body, mind, spirit is all connected spiritually, or in your spirit, shall I say. You will feel a lot more energized, because you'll have a lot like less weighing you down and burdening you, and thoughts about yourself, like, obviously will improve through higher vibration and stuff, because lies about yourself will be disintegrated from even your own thoughts, because sometimes you don't even realise that subconsciously you believe things about yourself which are incorrect, and have obviously just been like narcissistic projections. And there is a level of full like transcendence, I think, where you fully heal from all toxic people. You've insulated yourself. I think in terms of boundaries, you do. It's because people think boundaries are so scary, and they are. When you don't have that healing and you don't have the knowledge, you don't really know where to start with boundaries. I'm not going to lie. Like, you can logistically, like when I was in therapy and stuff, my therapist used to suggest boundaries to me when I needed them, and I did use them. I don't think there's anything wrong with manually enforcing boundaries that you know are healthy, that you don't feel the need to make. But when the more and more you heal, the more naturally boundaries come. And I think once you actually learn how to identify certain toxic patterns and stuff, you will naturally make those boundaries anyway. And I do think it's about like making healthy decisions based on the circumstance. But like, it's a sense of like, you know, sometimes it can be overwhelming to think, oh my god, there's going to be more, there's just always going to be narcissists in life, and they're always going to try and, you know, manipulate me or whatever. But it's amazing how the mind is very clever. It can be very clever at protecting you from toxic people, but it can also be very clever, like dealing with toxic relationships, but it can also be very clever after healing from toxic relationships and moving away from them as well, because your mind just is very clever in general, and it's amazing how it can be adaptive to different situations. And I think it's a sense of, you know, you're gonna make decisions in life. You're not gonna be perfect. No one's perfect. At the end of the day, we all make mistakes, and it's not about being hypervigilant to narcissists, as I've said in the past. It's just about doing the best you can with situations, because sometimes you really will be ensnared in manipulation that, you know, you may have blind spots still from recovering, and this is part of what I'm dealing with now, and just really just clearing out that map of codependency and really just exposing those blind spots and making sure I've got them insulated, because you do get blind spots if you've got certain aspects of toxic abuse that is unprocessed. And you really do feel this freedom, and you can see, like, you see the world, and I've done this video, you see the world in a way that you're programmed to see it, basically. Not in, that sounds bad, but what I mean is you see the world through a lens of your own trauma, for a start. So when you've resolved that trauma, you see the world through an untraumatized lens, and it can seem like a nicer place, and you can just recognise the difference between healthy and toxic behaviour a lot more. You can understand your own destiny, be aligned with your higher self more, and I think that's something that's easy to get your head around in terms of aligning with your higher self, because, you know, lots of, like, if you're toxic, like, you can't be aligned with a higher level of yourself in a narcissistic way. There's probably parts of a toxic person which can be aligned with higher selves. We all have a higher self, but toxic aspects, narcissistic aspects, they can't be aligned with a higher self because they're not connected to source, because God is like, let narcissists go, like, not in entirety, but I think narcissistic aspects, like, God doesn't validate that. So and we all have freedom of choice, and the idea of I can do what I want when I want, and no one else will tell me otherwise, kind of thing. Obviously, like, within reason, like, we all have obligation, to an extent that we decide to take on, but even that is a choice at the end of the day. We don't have to do anything. We can literally decide to live in our beds for the whole of our time on earth if we chose to, but we probably would starve. But equally, we all have will of choice in every day to do every single thing that we want, and we can just have rapidly disregarded that idea because of narcissistic people. It's about reintegrating the sense of, independence, and also you have the will of choice to do whatever you want, regardless what they want. You are first, second and third in life, and no is a full sentence, and you don't have to explain yourself, as I said, and I don't want to go back around in another circle, but you don't have to do what other people ask, even if it's something that you've done before. I think it's a sense of, just because you've done something in the past does not mean you have to continue that. It's about screwing up that codependent roadmap and moving on to healthier, more non-bias way of moving forward so that you can live a good life. Anyway, thank you for listening, and I'm going to go now. Thanks, bye.